The Middle East has long been a region fraught with deep-seated conflicts, religious tensions, and geopolitical rivalries. One of the most enduring and volatile conflicts is between Israel and Iran, whose governments have fundamentally opposing visions and interests. Recently, in light of escalating violence and military confrontations between Israel and various Iranian-backed groups, Iran has openly vowed to target any country that provides assistance to Israel. This threat marks a new escalation in the regional conflict, potentially broadening the scope of hostilities beyond Israeli-Iranian direct confrontation. Iran's leadership, particularly Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has consistently branded Israel as an illegitimate state and a Zionist regime responsible for widespread oppression of Palestinians. Iran's strategy has relied heavily on proxy groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and other allied militias across Syria, Iraq, and Yemen to challenge Israel indirectly. However, recent events have intensified Iran's rhetoric and willingness to expand attacks beyond Israel's borders. Recent escalations triggering Iran's threats. The latest wave of violence in the region has its roots in clashes in Gaza, Israeli military operations in Palestinian territories, and Iranian missile strikes on Israeli positions and allied U.S. military bases in the region. Iran has accused several countries of supplying military aid, intelligence support, or diplomatic backing to Israel, which Tehran considers acts of aggression and justification for retaliatory strikes. The Iranian government has now publicly threatened to expand its military operations against not only Israel, but also any nations that materially support Israel's defense or offensive operations. This stance is a significant escalation, as it raises the risk of a wider regional or even global conflict involving multiple states. Countries that are helping Israel. According to Iran, Iran's accusations focus on countries that have either supplied Israel with military hardware, intelligence, logistical support, or diplomatic cover. The list of countries Iran holds responsible includes 1. United States. The United States is the most prominent ally of Israel and the primary target of Iran's rhetoric. The U.S. provides Israel with advanced military technology, including the Iron Dome missile defense system, fighter jets, drones, and financial aid. The U.S. also conducts intelligence sharing with Israel and has stationed military forces across the Middle East, particularly in countries like Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE, which are strategic hubs for operations supporting Israel. Iran accuses the U.S. of orchestrating covert operations, conducting airstrikes against Iranian proxies, and providing political backing to Israel in international forums. Tehran has repeatedly warned that any U.S. involvement in the conflict will provoke harsh retaliation. 2. Saudi Arabia. Though Saudi Arabia has not officially recognized Israel, recent years have seen a significant warming of ties behind the scenes, largely driven by shared concerns over Iran's regional ambitions. Reports indicate Saudi Arabia is providing covert intelligence support and possibly logistical aid to Israel. Saudi Arabia also participates in the U.S.-led coalition in the region, which Iran interprets as indirect support for Israel. Iran views Saudi Arabia's assistance as betrayal and has issued warnings targeting Saudi cities and infrastructure. 3. United Arab Emirates, UAE. The UAE formally normalized relations with Israel through the Abraham Accords in 2020, becoming the first Gulf state to do so. Since then, cooperation between Israel and the UAE has expanded in areas such as technology, trade, and security. Iran condemns this normalization as a direct threat to its influence and accuses the UAE of enabling Israeli military and intelligence operations in the Gulf. Iranian officials have threatened to target UAE military and economic assets if the Emirates continue their support. 4. Bahrain, like the UAE, Bahrain also normalized ties with Israel in 2020 under the Abraham Accords. Bahrain hosts a significant U.S. naval presence, including the U.S. Fifth Fleet, which plays a key role in regional security. Iran views Bahrain's hosting of American forces and ties with Israel as provocative. Bahraini officials have been accused by Iran of facilitating intelligence and logistical support for Israeli operations. 5. Egypt maintains a complex relationship with Israel. Though it has a formal peace treaty since 1979 and cooperates on security issues, Egypt traditionally balances its stance with sympathy for Palestinian causes. Recently, Egypt has been accused by Iran of permitting Israeli intelligence to operate within its borders and allowing the movement of Israeli military supplies through the Sinai Peninsula. Iranian leaders have hinted that Egypt could become a target if it escalates its assistance to Israel. 6. Jordan shares a peace treaty with Israel and cooperates on border security and intelligence. It also hosts Palestinian refugees and mediates in Israeli-Palestinian disputes. Iran alleges Jordan is involved in intelligence sharing with Israel and provides logistical support that aids Israeli operations against Iranian proxies. Iran has cautioned Jordan about the consequences of its close ties with Israel. 7th, European Union countries. While most European countries officially call for peace and a two-state solution, some European nations have been accused by Iran of providing diplomatic support to Israel in the United Nations and supplying military technology indirectly through third parties. Countries like Germany, France, and the United Kingdom are scrutinized for their arms sales policies and their alliances with Israel. Iran has issued warnings to European nations against involvement, threatening diplomatic and covert retaliations. Forms of support and their implications, the countries listed above, contribute to Israel's efforts in several key ways. Military hardware and technology, supplying Israel with cutting-edge defense systems such as missile interceptors, drones, and surveillance technology. Intelligence sharing, providing real-time intelligence to preempt Iranian and proxy group actions. Logistical support, allowing transit and basing rights for Israeli or U.S. forces that support operations against Iran. Diplomatic backing, using international platforms like the UN Security Council to support Israel politically and block resolutions condemning Israeli actions. Iran interprets all these actions as hostile acts, justifying their stated intent to strike back against those countries. Potential consequences of Iran's threats. Iran's vow to attack countries supporting Israel, if acted upon, could trigger a far-reaching regional conflict with global ramifications. Wider military conflict. Potential missile strikes or proxy attacks on U.S. bases in the Gulf, Saudi oil infrastructure, and strategic facilities in the UAE and Bahrain. Disruption of global energy supplies. Attacks on Gulf oil exports could spike global oil prices and destabilize energy markets. Escalation of proxy wars. Increased fighting in Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq as Iran mobilizes proxies against Israeli and allied targets. International diplomatic fallout. Increased polarization at the UN and among global powers over responses to Iran's aggression. Civilian casualties and refugee crises. Intensified fighting risks massive civilian casualties and displacement across the region. International responses and diplomatic efforts. In response to Iran's threats, the international community remains cautious. The United States has reinforced its military presence in the Gulf and intensified intelligence cooperation with allies. The European Union calls for restraint, but is divided on how to respond to Iranian aggression. Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE bolster their defenses and deepen security ties with Western allies. The United Nations has urged dialogue and condemned any escalation but struggles to mediate amid entrenched hostilities. Efforts for diplomatic de-escalation continue, but face substantial challenges given the deep mistrust and ongoing violence. Conclusion: Iran's vow to attack countries aiding Israel marks a dangerous escalation in the Middle East conflict, risking a broader regional war. The list of countries targeted by Iran includes major powers such as the United States, key Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and neighboring countries like Egypt and Jordan, as well as some European nations. These countries' military, logistical, and diplomatic support for Israel has drawn Iran's ire, which Tehran has vowed to counter aggressively. As tensions rise, the international community watches anxiously, aware that the conflict could spiral beyond Israel and Iran into a devastating regional confrontation with global consequences. The coming weeks and months will be critical in determining whether diplomacy can prevent wider war, or if Iran will carry out its threats against those it deems enemies for aiding Israel.